Welcome to the Hero's Blueprint. Today's professor is someone whose journey is both deeply inspiring and incredibly real. Darren Prince entered the sports and entertainment industry at just 14, building a multi-million-dollar baseball card company. After selling that business, he launched Prince Marketing Group in 1996, representing legends like Magic Johnson, Smokin' Joe Frazier, Dennis Rodman, Chevy Chase, and Pamela Anderson, just to name a few. His career has been defined by incredible success, coordinating endorsements, corporate events, and licensing deals. But behind the scenes, Darren battled a hidden struggle with addiction. On July 2nd, 2008, Darren hit rock bottom and with God made the life-altering decision to get sober. Since then, he's turned his pain into purpose, writing his best-selling book Aiming High and dedicating his life to helping others overcome addiction and becoming a powerful advocate for recovery. His story is one of redemption, resilience, and commitment to making a difference. Darren, it's an honor to have you here, brother. How you doing?
Thanks for having me. All good.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So there's a lot to unpack right there in that intro. A lot of success, a lot of highlights and stuff right there. But I want to take it back to the early days because I think that's a really good place to start because it's no secret that nowadays, especially with the younger generation, people around my age, that addiction and drug usage and mental health is at an all-time high. And I want to go back to your early days. What were kind of like your early days like growing up? And I heard you say before that you felt uncomfortable in your own skin. Can you kind of unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I can't blame it on any sort of like family trauma. I mean, there's all sorts of trauma growing up. I'm sure there was certain instances and whatnot. It was a me issue. It was something that, from the time I was little, I just felt sort of awkward socially, inept. I kind of felt like I was on my own island. I was a bit of a loner at times. And I think also when I grew up, I talk about this often, I was put in special ed classrooms. So when you're in a class with 5 or 6 kids and all your friends are in rooms with 40 and 50, I get verbally teased, quite often. And I think just not speaking up about that when my first opportunity, unknowingly, to put a substance in my body, which was at sleepaway camp at 14, my life changed forever. It was everything I was looking for to become complete and whole.
Yeah. No, I can relate a lot to what you just said right there about feeling like you're kind of like on your own island too as well. I grew up in a single parent household and we were very low income. I have no siblings or anything like that. So growing up, it was very isolating, and a lot of times I felt very lonely. I actually started my battle unknowingly as well with drug addiction and drug abuse around 14 as well, 15 years old for me, and going into high school. It's very interesting because it feels like nowadays, especially that age range of getting introduced is getting lower and lower. So you said yours was at a camp. What was how was that? How did you get introduced to something that eventually led you down that road?
I had terrible stomach pains one night. Looking back at it, it was more separation anxiety. Growing up a mama's boy, my mom way over coddled me, and I just think I felt very safe in my home, in my room at night, just knowing my parents were there. My dad was my closest friend in the world, and I think just being away from them, those cramps weren't real cramps. It was just extreme anxiety, and the counselor took me to the nurse, gave me a green liquid and a clear cloth syrup cup, and as bad as it tasted, within 5 minutes, not only did I get introduced to the world, but the world got introduced to me. And every one of those inadequacies went away, and I felt like superpower. I felt like Superman. All those feelings of less than weren't there anymore. I was just as cool, just as popular, funny, felt just as smart. And, thinking nothing of it, I did all my activities the next day, and that next night in the bunk bed, I just decided to learn how to lie and con, and I healed over strictly because I wanted more of that green liquid, and flew up across the softball field, the soccer field. I remember in my pajamas, and nurse gave me more of that stuff, and it went on for 3 weeks until my mom and dad came up visitation day and found that I was taking liquid Demerol.
Wow. So what happened once your parents found out?
Well, that was the end of that. Having no idea really where to find it or what it was. I had my wisdom teeth removed a few months later from my dentist in Livingston, New Jersey, where I grew up. And same sort of thing. My mom gave me these 2 white pills. told me to, go upstairs and rest. He just brings some ice packs and some soup. And my God, within like 15 minutes, that feeling came back. And I just couldn't put two and two together. How can a green liquid and these white pills have the exact same feeling? I'm just freaking flying in the bed, calling up my friends. And I'm the cool one, the smart one, the popular one, calling up girlfriends of mine. Finally had the courage to do that. And that same night, I went downstairs in the middle of the night. I remember to get some water. My parents were sleeping, and I looked at the bottle, and there was only 2 pills left, and it said Vicodin ES, so Vicodin extra strength. And the minute my mom woke up that morning, I put the crocodile tears on, grabbed my cheek. I started, screaming, "Mom, my tooth is killing me. We got to go back to the dentist. I think I have a horrible infection." And as a loving mother, who wants to see their child suffer, right? So she took me back to the dentist, and we got a couple more days of those pills. And 1 in 3 kids that go to a dentist appointment nowadays become opiate addicts that get prescription opiates, and I was one of those 3.
Yeah. Wow, that's an insane statistic right there. That really is. So I know around that age as well, that's when you started really kind of getting entrepreneur minded and kind of really starting that stuff.
That didn't help the situation, because now I have my own resources. I probably made at 14 a couple $100,000 selling baseball cards. I was doing trade shows on the weekend, which was unheard of in 1984. I was one of the original OGs of the baseball card boom, and started getting a lot of notoriety. By the time I was 16, I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and any sort of drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, you name it, I did it, and I could afford it. And I would buy it for all my friends that I thought were friends. And I just wanted to take a lot of them along for the ride, because now I was the cool kid. I was the successful, and I was the one that was making more money than most of their families were making at such a young age. And it was just all about partying and building up, at that time, Baseball Card City, which eventually changed to Prince of Cards. Which my father came up with that name, which became my moniker for many, many years.
Yeah.
Even women in dating, that didn't come into my life until I was about 18 or 19. I could care less. And once that started happening, and obviously once I got into the agency game, that just went to, another level too, where it was all about the exterior, all about, look at me. Look at my life, look at what I accomplished, all those instant gratification, dopamine hits.
Yeah. No, so I want to dive in there, because that is an insane amount of money to make at that age. And like you said, you had the resources to buy the stuff then, and then it just became easier to get a hold of. When you got to the part to when you sold that and then you started the agency, how much would you say your identity was kind of tied into the pills? Like, do you think you would have got to that point of being able to start the agency if you weren't?
It's a great question. It happens a lot when I speak to high school kids. I have to be careful. So when I sold the baseball card company, I dove into doing autograph signings. And dear friend of mine, Herlin Order, was Muhammad Ali's agent. I met him through a mutual friend, and so I went for the biggest name in the world, and from Ali, we got Frazier. I eventually got introduced by Harlan to Magic Johnson's agent, and got dialed in with Larry Bird. And there were just so many names, Pamela Anderson, Chevy Chase. And I had that business for about 4.5, 5 years, and I got in a bunch of trouble, probably around 94, 95, I think it was, where I was investigated by the FBI. There was a bunch of Michael Jordan fraudulent memorabilia being sold, but it was authenticated by an FBI forensic document expert. And the stuff looked, spot on, that it was legit. And so now I had my first issue with a financial catastrophe and a legal situation. I didn't get charged with mail fraud because the judge knew at that point. I was just a young kid that was doing mostly everything right. I made one major mistake, and I got charged with a felony of making a false statement to the FBI because I sort of conflicted one of the stories protecting my source, who I thought was a legitimate friend, and I truly believed that the stuff I was selling was real. But in the interim, before the sentencing, I started sending out refunds to as many people as possible, and that's when I wound up really on the balls of my ass financially for the first time in my life at 25. And my dad and I we took a fly fishing trip to Alaska with the last $3,000 to my name. Fishing was everything to us. That's where I got all my lessons from my dad out on the boat. And he asked me, what's your next move? Are you going to go back into the business, or is it something else you wanted? I'm like, Dad, it's so messed up because all these people, when I'm on top, they all want access to this product and everything that I'm selling. And, now I make one mistake and there's so many haters and nobody wants to have anything to do with me. I think I want to be an agent, but I just don't have 8 years to go to law school. And he dropped his fishing pole in the middle of this gorgeous stream. We were fly fishing with a tour guide. I'll never forget it. He goes, why do you need law school? Life is about who you don't know, what you know. Because look at all the iconic people in your life right now. And I would speak to Magic and I would tell him your vision. He stuck by you with this. They know you're a good person. You made a terrible mistake that you're going to learn from. And it's a few weeks later, I was with Magic in Michigan. We had an event. We had an appearance at the Gibraltar Trade Center. I don't think it exists anymore. I think it was in Sterling, Michigan, and invited me into his hotel suite before we left, sat me down, and sort of asked me the same question my dad did. He goes, man, how did it all work out? No, thank God you're going to make lemons out of lemonade. This was a few years removed from his HIV announcement. He goes, God tests great men and great women, and he's testing you. And asked me what I was going to do moving forward. And I was so nervous, man. My heart was palpitating. I knew this was that one moment in life. I got to ask him because I don't want to regret it. And hands were sweating. And I said, I want to be an agent. And then the next question was, who do you have in mind as clients? Because you need some big ones. And that's when the nerves and the anxiety really went through the roof. And I was like, I'd love it to be you, Irvin. I call him by his real name, Irvin. Magic Johnson's his nickname. And he had that big $1 billion smile, and he put his hands on my shoulder and said, look, I know all about making a mistake in the public eye. And, I love you, and I love your family. Everything to me, even back then, was about building those personal relationships, so much more than the money. And he's like, I'm going to give you 2 years, but if you don't use me to knock down every door in those 2 years, bring in all the celebrity clients you can and networking your butt off, I'm going to fire you before those 2 years are up, because life isn't how successful I become. I'm going to be a success in the world of retired athletes and celebrities they've never seen before. It's about how successful I can make you and everybody else around me, because when you get there, you're going to pay it forward to other people. And there's not a agent, employee, anybody in my life that's been a part of PMG since it started that wouldn't tell you that their life hasn't gotten better, in every way, because I'm always in some sort of giving vibration and giving nature because of those words of Magic, even ones that don't work with me anymore, that I'm still, several of them are my closest friends in the world, and they're all crushing it. And nothing makes me more happy to see that. And then, we had something known as morality clauses in the contracts that I had to learn about. And it specifically mentioned DUIs, illegal drug use, getting to your question. And at that point, I had a lot of anxiety still. I had terrible sciatica from working out and stresses. So doctors gave me opiates. And I go, perfect. I could take painkillers and drink when I'm out and network my butt off. And for the first 5 or 6 years, man, I would say probably till the early part of the 2000s, it did work. This is the part where I'm very careful when I speak to high school kids. But at one point, what was living to use turned out to using to live. And I don't know when it turned on me, but my superpowers slowly were disappearing. And, not paying attention to the business. It was even more than that. There was some corporate tax issues I wasn't paying attention to. So it was so much more than putting my life on the line that you thought from the outside, yeah, okay, well, these could have helped accelerate my relationships, but there was still so many flaws and so many errors being made inconsistently because I was high all the time.
Yeah, that's powerful. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to ask that question too is because, like you said, eventually did catch up to you. And I think because it definitely caught up with me, and you see it all the time when people have externally they have that as their kind of like their charger to charge up their batteries to keep them going forward, whether it's drugs or something like that. Eventually it's going to come to a point to where you are nothing kind of without that, in a sense. If you for years go and you do something and everything is dependent on you doing something external to get you to that point, once you lose that, then you kind of like, I know a lot of people, they just end up being like, they're like, who am I now? Like, I don't know who I am without this or what I am. And it's just not sustainable in the long run. So I think it's really important for people to kind of take a second and listen and understand that is that it's no matter how good you think it is right now and how powerful you might feel at this moment, like you're a superhero, it's gonna come back to you and
it's not real.
It's not
real. It's an artificial feeling of putting something into your system to become somebody that you're not.
Yeah, and it disconnects you from the people around you in a real strong sense too. That's definitely something, is that when you feel good all the time, you're becoming masked to what everyone else kind of is feeling and the people around you too. So that's something real powerful. So going into that too, I want to dissect that further, because a lot of people, they hear Magic Johnson, they're hearing you talk to Magic Johnson and getting to work with them and eventually having him as a client underneath you. A lot of people, when they think about their dreams and what they kind of like want out of life, the first thing that comes up is all the reasons why they can't talk to Magic, why they can't become an agent, why they can't do these things. What was your kind of like mindset? What was pushing you forward that was helping you to say, you know what, like this is a door that I can walk through, that this is possible? Was this something you kind of always had, or was this something that like you had to kind of train yourself to be like, I'm not limited based off of what everyone else around me is doing or what the world says I can and can't be?
I think in my own way, I had an unshakable confidence as an entrepreneur. Now, this was obviously something entirely new, brand new sector, because when you're going from autograph signings to becoming a real agent, it's night and day. Anybody could do autograph signings, but when you're talking about, understanding licensing deals and intellectual properties and negotiating TV commercials and all the other things that come along with it, if they're part of SAG, the union fees that have to get paid, so I knew that it was still going to be a learning curve, and I had to surround myself with the right entertainment lawyers to get that education. But I had a strong enough relationship with him at that point for a few years that I knew I just had to go for it. I think there were moments in life before that where I was too shy. I wasn't assertive enough. I knew there was opportunities that I wanted to stay in my comfort zone of just selling baseball cards. But then I realized, I'm also in a position where most people try to take from celebrities and athletes. And I'm somebody that's coming here to offer to you. And I think that's very unique because they're not used to that. If I'm calling, if I'm bothering you, it's to bring you opportunities to make money, and that started giving me a lot more confidence. Now, I know it might be different for people that might want to get their foot in the door, but I tell them often, I mean, I had somebody, I did a keynote in Miami before the Miami, he came on Sunday, and some young kid, probably in his early 20s, asked me, what could he do to start developing relationships with athletes, entertainers? He loves the field. I was like, start DMing every single one of them. You never know where you're going to get a call back or a message from one of their assistants. People are willing to help. There's a lot of, people in that industry that I know, they want to see people do good and they want to create opportunities for other people. If there's somebody in a certain sector of an industry that you admire, that you look up to, email, send a letter. Nothing's changed that way. You have to be resilient, because if you have that self-doubt, you're never going to get anywhere. And I mean, now I walk into a room and I know it's not coming from a place of ego. I own a room when I walk into it. It's my energy. It's my frequency. I deserve, not because of the way my business has exploded, but because of the person that I am. I know people just love and admire my transparency, my vulnerability, my openness, my honesty. I'll be at the Lakers game tonight, and Jeannie Buss and Linda Rambis are dear friends, the owner, Jeannie, and see them, get time with them. I walk in with such a sense of peace and comfort and quiet God-given confidence because I do the work, and um, it's not from a place of entitlement at all. Even if you'd asked me 25, 30 years ago, yeah, that would have been a place from ego. I know that when I walk into a room that everybody can identify with me, and there's people that truly wish they could be as open as I am. And I think in times when people have struggles, and most of the time, and they go through adversity, I think that's what we all need to be talking about. And I think if somebody's reaching out to somebody they want as a mentor or somebody they admire, don't just talk about your dreams. Talk about what you've been through. Talk about your challenges and your obstacles, because there's no successful person I know that hasn't had the same thing.
Yeah.
Nobody's had smooth sailing. You know, I'm an overnight success, and it took me 31 years to become an overnight success. People don't see behind the scenes what I had to do to cultivate relationships, build my brand, become a voice, get on the biggest talk shows, the biggest stages, write my book, everything that goes into it, the personal relationship development with all my celebrities, whether it's, a long phone call with, Charlie Sheen, Hulk Hogan, Chevy Chase, we're like a family. Carmen Electra, every one of us. Jerry West was near and dear to me, passed on June 12th. I miss him every day. Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, they were family. And people just look and they go, oh my God, or that's amazing. Or some people could say, oh, how did he get so lucky? It's not luck. I've never believed in the word luck. I believe that preparation meets opportunity at that exact time. And when it's meant to align, that's when it happens. But if you're not doing the road work, as Smoking Joe used to say, and the preparation behind the scenes, you're just going to stay where you are. And that's okay for some people. I mean, some entrepreneurship's not for everybody. When you're a business owner, my God, I mean, it could be right on top one day, and then the next day it shits the city from something you have no idea that you didn't see coming. But it's about trying to remain calm and get into the place of the solution. And I understand it because, I've had enough people that work for me over the years. They'd rather be in a comfort place of knowing what their role is, what their job is, what their hours are, what their expectations are. Obviously, incentivize them as much as you can, which is great. But my boy Dan Fleischman and I talk about this all the time, and I think Dan through Craig.
Yeah.
We laugh about it. People don't realize entrepreneurship is 24/7. I was up at 3 a.m. last night after getting it at 12:30 from Miami, emailing some people over in Australia on business, because I know if I miss their emails, another 24 to 36 hours could go by. There was another group in England that we have this licensed boxing video game with for Smoking Joe Frazier and Mickey Ward. And, there was some questions on some marketing. I mean, my brain just cannot shut off. And it's okay. That's the way I want it, because, while we suck up all the crap, we also reap the most benefits when things are meant to be in alignment, and I just know no other way.
Yeah. There's a ton of good information and nuggets that you just dropped right there. But something I really want to touch upon right there is when you mentioned about authenticity and vulnerability. I also believe that energy too is just contagious, and you could take someone's energy away, or you can give someone energy by a simple smile or a simple frown. And I think that one thing that really holds people back from DMing people, from trying to chase that life that they want, is that they're not authentic enough with themselves, in the sense of they're always questioning, what does this person want me to be? And they're trying to do that rather than being who they are. A lot of people are scared to share their story, their struggles, and their vulnerability. They want to be this perfect person, and that's something that social media kind of has helped instill. But especially for the younger
because
generation,
they're also watching the wrong content.
Yeah,
my
that's
last
true.
couple of girlfriends were in their 20s, and the most recent one, I tell her all the time, she's starting to get in alignment with people that are voices, people that are really world changers and game changers. And David Goggins, his dear friend and client, he got to spend some time with her, talking about the culture, because he understands it too. And I was like, You got to watch him. You got to watch my friend Jay Shetty. You got to watch Mel Robbins. Lewis Howes, like Tony Robbins, Joel Osteen's a dear friend of mine. If you want to go a little bit more in the religious, spiritual route, like that's what you need to see when you wake up in the morning. And it's the first thing on your phone when you grab your phone and you're on Instagram and you're on Twitter. You want to see those nuggets. You want to see those messages, because it's all about getting through whatever unresolved traumas that we all have and understanding to align yourself with the right people and what you need to do to really develop that self-love, that self-belief system, that self-confidence that so many have dealt with. And when they're online and they're seeing friends on yachts and private jets and with their, Chanel bags and or people that they know, they just immediately go to a place of lack and insecurity, and I want that, and that resentment kicks in, and it's so bad. It's such an unhealthy way to be. And I tell people the quickest fix to develop self-love and self-esteem and self-worth is to be of service to others, not be a pushover, not say yes to everything. There's a huge difference, because I know a lot of people that will say they're yes people. No matter what it is, they don't want to let people down because they want to be accepted. That's not going to develop self-love and self-esteem and self-worth. That's going to make it even worse. That's just going to delay the process. But understanding that, hey, if you're going through something, get out of your own head by calling a friend that might be struggling with something worse, or get involved in a local charity organization, whether it's a food kitchen or a children's cancer hospital, something that can really give you that inner boost that you need of, wow, I'm really doing something productive today, and look at the smile I'm putting on people's faces.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I always, that's totally beautiful. And all those names that you just mentioned too, a lot of people, when they think of those names, they instantly, the first image that might come up in their head is success. But I encourage everyone to really do a deep dive on some of the people like Lewis Howes. I mean, you dive into his story, you find out that he battled a bunch of different things, insecurity, almost homelessness. Tony Robbins, that dude had a tumor. He battled so many different things. And
I love how Tony, I've met him before. He's tremendous. How if he didn't have the mother he had, he wouldn't be the Tony Robbins he became.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, Jerry West went through it. He was very open about his suicidal depression till the day he passed away. Had an abusive father. He lost his brother in the Korean War. His brother was his best friend, never recovered from it. But what he did do was he immersed himself on the basketball court to become one of the greatest to ever do it. Yeah. So sometimes you look at our traumas and there's all different levels of them, and it's what you do with them. You can roll around with it for decades and your life goes nowhere, but you could use it as motivation and fuel to stand on your own 2 feet and say, I'm not going to allow that to identify me. That's going to be a major bump on the road that I'm going to use to, change the trajectory of my life, or break the generational curse, because your father lived this way and his grandfather and father was that way and his father was that way, or your mother's sister this and your mother was that. No, you can break a generational curse. I've done it myself. My mom's side had the isms. That's where addiction came from, alcoholism and substance abuse, but not so much in my household. I just always wanted to be, as David Goggins says, at any phase of my life, I always wanted to be uncommon amongst the uncommon.
Yeah.
And so when the gift of recovery came into my life, I was like, I don't want to be like every other spiritual brother and sister in the 12-step fellowship sponsoring people. And no, I want to be a game changer. I want to be a world changer. Get this out to the masses.
Yeah. Now, one thing I've learned from being around people like you and other very successful people is everybody, I wouldn't say everybody, a lot of people are really scared to be misfits and scared to use their story or speak about their story. But I always say something is that, you're most qualified to serve the person you once were. And the stuff that you've been through and the stuff that you've gone through are the exact people that you can help out now. I mean, you 10 years ago, you're most qualified to help that person 10 years ago. But in order to do that, you need to first be open about your story and what you've gone through so other people can look at you and say, I can relate to you. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is that when you're just chasing success, when you're just looking at Instagram and you're seeing all these yachts and that's what you want in your life, is you're making yourself so unrelatable to 99.9% of the population that you're just completely living for yourself. And like,
man, I have so many friends. There's a handful that don't do it, that are insanely successful, and they're posting their jets and their Rolls Royce and their Bentleys and their Ferraris and Lamborghinis. Hey, I got nothing wrong with the flex. It's just not me anymore. I don't need to live that way. I don't need to do that. I could be living in a multi-million-dollar home and driving a Ferrari. I've been there, done that. I had all the toys and stuff. That's not what makes me happy. And the problem is when they're posting like that, if there's not a direct message of individuals that they've helped, some testimonies, charitable work that they're doing, it's sending the wrong message. And that's a me issue. I laugh when I look at it because I said, wow, man, this man or this woman is so insanely broken and insecure. They know nothing about healing whatsoever. The money came and that's what defined them. And they still have all that childhood bullying issues, that trauma. They have no idea what genuine peace and happiness is. And unfortunately, too much of today's culture follows those type of people. So what I tell them is, like I said, if they have a blend of, doing charitable fundraising and they talk about, what they've been through to get this level of success, their trials and tribulations, and they're open to share that, those are the people you could be following, because they're now being transparent versus the ones that are just doing the straight up flex.
yeah, no, absolutely. I want to touch on the point when you hit rock bottom on July 2nd, 2008. One thing that you've accredited to is having a spiritual awakening in God. And I think a lot of people going through stuff, whether it be addiction or just mental struggles and stuff like that, they haven't truly hit rock bottom. Can you kind of tell me about how you knew that day was your rock bottom and what really kind of happened that made you change your life?
Yeah, it was the day before July 1st of 2008. My late Uncle Stu and his then girlfriend, Andrea, were visiting my mom from Miami in New Jersey. I was already at the jumping off point, but my ego was too big to go to rehab. And she came to my place with my uncle, surprise visit, and I never had a connection like tractor beams with a woman in my life like this or anybody. And she asked if everything was okay, and I told her everything that was going on. And she's like, do you realize you're an addict and your life's manageable? And I said, yeah. And she goes, do you realize you're powerless? I said, yep. And then she starts pointing to all the pictures on the wall of me and some of the most iconic celebrities of all time that I worked with and for, and said, do you realize this doesn't mean anything because you don't mean anything to yourself? And that broke my soul, and I started to cry. And she said to me, are you want to do anything it takes because I can help you? And with that, she pulled out a 5-year sober coin that she just got a few weeks earlier and said, your uncle's in recovery, so am I. I could help you with this. And I said, I'll do anything. And it was the next night, July 2nd, 2008. I was going through, the detox and going to the gym 2-3 times, steam room, sauna, vomiting, upset stomach, shaking. I had the chills. I'm out of my mind. I called them up at like 7 o'clock that night from my apartment in New York. They were back in Miami. I said, I can't freaking do this. I'm calling the damn doctor to get what I really need to get. And I hung up the phone on them as my uncle's saying, this is the damn disease talking. It's your freaking ego. It's this immature BS. You've been living this way since a teenager. And I said, I don't want to hear it. I hung up the phone, locked myself in the bathroom door. My then wife was panicking, banging on the door, thinking I was going to kill myself because she was a part of an overdose 4 to 6 months earlier in Las Vegas. And I'm going through the medicine cabinet trying to find any non-narcotic anxiety pills that Andrea told me I could take during this weaning off period. And out came 2 extra cent Vicodins out of one of the bottles, which was like bizarre because Simone, my ex, and I, we claimed out every medicine cabinet of all the opiates on purpose. So how these two got there, I have no idea. And for a split second, it seemed like that was a God shot. Like, wow, just what I needed for relief. And God had other plans because I fell to my knees, man, for the first time in my life. And I screamed, take the money, take the business, take the notoriety. If you take me out of hell, I'll spend one day at a time taking others out with me. And my right shoulder caught fire. I heard a voice in my ear said, I got you when you're ready. Stood up, I flushed the pills, found a 12-step meeting recovery meeting online on the computer in the upper 80s at a church basement, and I jumped in a taxi because there was no Uber back then, and looking up at the sky this gorgeous summer night of July 2nd, 2008, and thinking, oh my God, for the first time in my life, I wanted to stay sober more than I wanted to get high. And I walked into this church basement with 150 to 200 addicts and alcoholics who were all once for a hopeless state of mind. And they told me about the 5 A's: attitude, adjustment, accountability, acceptance, and action. They said, don't worry if you don't get the fellowship. You keep showing up. The fellowship is going to get you. And the one that just blew me away as well was, we will love you before ever you know how to love yourself. And I put one foot in front of the other, and meetings became my life. And getting to those dark places in my soul that, I needed to clear out by doing the step work. And then once I got to a year sober, I was in the south of France with Simone. And I remember my sponsor, everybody's calling, texting. My sponsor, Steve De-Paola, calls me up and he goes, how you feeling? I go, good. He goes, man, it feels good. 1 year, baby. He goes, I'm super proud of you. He goes, you know what comes next? I go, no. He goes, 2 things, 1 year and 1 day. And he goes, you want to keep this gift, right? I said, yeah. He goes, well, you've been a taker for the first year. And he goes, and somebody with your platform and the people that you know and the media and, where you are all over the world talking about your clients and your business, you need to start giving back because you're not going to keep this gift. And it was like another God shot. Like, I just had this feeling when he said it. I remember walking in Cannes on the street after we had lunch talking to him, and it was like, I'm in this gorgeous place on earth, and it was like the God energy just went through me. And I was like, he's right. I've been taking every day for the past year. And now it's time to return this gift to people that need it.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I got to give you a lot of credit for being open and sharing your story, for all these years that you've done, because like you said, you had everything. When you dropped to your knees, anyone who didn't know you that was from the outside looking in would have said, this guy's a huge success. I want to be everything that he is. I want
role model, looking up to me. Yep.
And if you never shared that story, which a lot of people don't do, is they just don't share, then people would never understand what truly people are going through. And by you sharing that story and the stuff that you've gone through, it really just helps. It helps so many people to be able to relate and be like, oh my God, like I could have all this stuff and still feel unhappy. So by you sharing,
and the other thing is too, they got to keep in mind, don't look at the external success, because that's just a byproduct of what I'm able to live with every day. Because I've said it before, if I lost the agency tomorrow, I'm good. Like, I will figure life out. I will downgrade where I live. I'll move to a studio. The part that just breaks my heart is everybody that works for me and the people near and dear with me in my life on this journey I wouldn't be able to take care of. That's success, because I've found self-love. I've found inner peace. I felt that I've developed real self-confidence from the core. And like I said, I know people 50, 60, billions of dollars. They don't understand that feeling. And I grew up around, some of the biggest movers and shakers in New York City. They're all worth hundreds of millions of dollars, major exits. Some of them are the best people in the world, huge fans of me and my journey. And we love each other. We support each other. We cheer for each other. But even some of them, I can tell they're not the happiest that they should be, because it became a game and it becomes a status thing, and it becomes how much more can we accumulate and what do we have to do next to stay ahead of the competition. I don't live in that vibration, man. I do way too much work outside of the 12 steps, and I'm very open about it. With my guy Lingerie, he's a vibrational, trauma blockage specialist and healer, and my Gary Brecka got me on the 10X supplement program. I do red light therapy, grounding patches, hydrogen water. I work out 6 days a week. Diet, pretty strict when I'm home. On the road, sometimes it gets difficult. I do a lot of meditation, a lot of breath work. I talk to my inner child as often as I can, because I want to, continuously show him and take him. And even if there's a little bit of residue that still pop up, because healing is a ongoing process. Nobody's ever healed. I do that because I want to continuously evolve, but none of it's possible unless I put other people first. When I become selfish for me, I'm then able to become selfless to help other people. And whether it's through my Aiming High Foundation, my 501c3 that scholarships people that can't afford treatment, which is the greatest thing in the world. That moments like that is how I've developed real self-love and self-esteem and self-confidence. Knowing that my connection to God has given me a platform to just have a random person that might reach out, a mother, father, sister, brother, husband, wife, their significant others struggling. They don't have the resources. But, Aiming High, my 501c3, that we've had some very generous contributors over the years, has now allowed me to really pay it forward with the gift for those struggling with mental health and substance abuse and align them with the treatment center to give them a life that they normally never would have had. It's just the greatest feeling in the world. Nothing better. And when I'm able to get on stages around, the country and around the world and talk about that, it resonates with everybody. There's nobody that we know that doesn't know somebody suffering with mental health or the opiate epidemic right now. Nobody.
Yep.
No one's off the table. It affects everybody.
Yeah. No, 100% it does. I really try and live by the motto that our mutual friend David Meltzer says, which is be more interesting than interested, or be more interested than interesting. When you have that service mindset rather than asking how can I take from everybody, and you're functioning from the vibration of how can I give to everybody, what can I learn about these people, what do they need, how can I help, your whole life starts to change and you start attracting just totally different things in your life. I have a question for you. So for somebody who's who's just going through their own struggle right now, whether it just be addiction, self-doubt, or finding their purpose, what advice would you give to them for kind of step one to start instilling some change? What can they do to kind of find their footing and really start to pivot?
Buy my boy David Goggins' audiobook, Can't Hurt Me. There's a reason it sold over 7 million copies, and some of the biggest stars on the planet like LeBron, The Rock, Joe Rogan, John Bones Jones, that they're all in contact with him and have read that book. I know everyday people and I know superstars. I think that's a great start. I think Tony Robbins is incredible, and these are not remedies that cost a lot of money. That's why I'm suggesting them. I think Jay Shetty, Think Like a Monk. I think there's so many incredible healing resources in there that you just have to find what it is for you that pops you and moves you. Like Dave Meltzer, is my spiritual brother. There's some gems that he's writing. Tim Story, dear friend and client. I mean, these are all world shakers and world changers. I mean, Goggins is obviously doing at a level where he's so identifiable, being a blue collar guy. Where I get it. It's difficult because like a few weeks ago, I was with Dominique Wilkins, who's a business partner and dear friend. We have our private equity group, the Legacy Fund. My boy Amo and Kevin Harrington, the Shark Tank Judge, were all partners with it. And he was mesmerized by Goggins. So we were talking after the fact, and he's like, it's unbelievable. Because what do you think, like, the wow factor is? I'm like, Nick, it's the identification. Like, I've booked Tom Brady for Grant Cardone. Magic's been my guy for 30 years. Joe Montana, Jerry Rice. I just booked Jerry. I booked Joe early this year. The people can celebrate these moments, but they can't go home and take Dominique Wilkins slam dunk winning championships and the competition with Michael Jordan. It motivates them, but it's hard sometimes to take an action off of that for the everyday type of person. I was like, when you guys all start diving into your adversity of injuries or health issues or family problems, now it becomes a little bit more identifiable. But even still, I know the way the human mindset works because I represent talent for so many years is people say, oh, well, it must have been easier for him because he still had a huge contract and was guaranteed millions of dollars. So I get it. I get that point. So that's why I think, the Tim Stories of the world, the Dave Meltzers, the David Goggins, the Jay Shettys, like Tony Robbins, like I preach it again and again. I've seen so many people find something that just shifted them and something that moved them, where that can literally be like their Bible, their encyclopedia, their resource to go through over and over again to get their own moment of clarity like I had on July 2nd, 2008. I have my book too, The Aiming High, and the amount of people that's helped over the years is just remarkable. Such a blessing when I wrote it, 6.5 years ago.
Yeah. No, that's such great advice, and really asking how did somebody get to where they are instead of just looking at where they are right now and saying, okay, that's who they are. Like when you these people that you mentioned, like Goggins, when you really get in his story, like people see who he is today, but they would never know that he grew up in an abusive household, all these different things, had to
It
lose
was
all that weight.
obese and racially abused and everything else, and
Oh yeah.
over 300 pounds, but what I love about him and Magic and like so many of my guys that are like even Hulk, even though he's getting older, like we all live in a disciplinary, consistent vibration. And life isn't about discipline. It's the consistency. It's what you do every single day. No matter how I'm feeling, I will always find time to implement my routine somehow, some way. And most people in my life, they're not there. And that's okay. I have to look at the people that I work with and for, the people that I represent. I think there's so many of these tools and remedies out there now. The easiest thing for people to say is, "Oh, I can't afford that," or most of it doesn't even cost any money to get your mental, spiritual, and physical health in order. If you can't afford to go to a gym, you can afford to go for a walk. I didn't have time to go all day and down on the grass, so I've got grounding mats and patches that I travel with. It's the same thing, the earthing and the grounding patches, because sometimes my schedule is nuts, but there's not a day that I don't miss it. People are obsessed with, drinking water and staying hydrated. Well, you know what? Make an investment and buy yourself a hydrogen water bottle. Watch what happens to the inflammation of your body and other incredible remedies that, that come from that and changes from hydrogen water. There's the breath work. Doesn't cost anything. Go on YouTube, learn about it, type in breath work, type in meditation, learn ways to change your nervous system from not being so depressed all the time or on on some crazy anxiety trip where you can't calm your brain down and you're only sleeping 2-3 hours a night. I understand, it's mixed depending who you speak to. That depression is real for sure, but there's so much more you could be doing than just going to a doctor. Make that effort to, level up your life. And the internet's a wonderful thing when you're able to use it properly. Either following the right people, like I said, going to YouTube, downloading free audiobooks because they're out there too. But you got to put in the effort. And then most importantly, once you get there, you got to stay consistent, because it's what I do each and every day, no matter where I am, that, allows a life of abundance in every single way possible to manifest.
Yeah. I want to add on some right there too, because I know a lot of people, especially my age, or people, they're a product of their environment. And a lot of these things that you mentioned aren't stuff that maybe their friends or their family are doing, so they just don't implement it themselves. I encourage everyone to be okay with being different and doing things differently, because just because everyone around you isn't doing something like breath work or isn't doing something like even working out, doesn't mean that you should just go along with them. I mean, if you want to be just like them, then do exactly what they're doing. But if you want something more, you're going to have to do something different than what they're doing, and really kind of step in your own path and purpose. And a lot of these things that Darren just said right here, like you said, it isn't expensive or it's free. I mean, just from one book, like you can get Awaken the Giant Within from Tony Robbins, and right there you learn everything about mindset, NLP. You learn
that's your encyclopedia. Highlight everything, And if you're not into reading books, you download the audio version. What's it, $20?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to be able to come up with $20 at some point, no matter how bad things are, to be one of the greatest comeback stories ever. And something like that should be told. And I'm sure it does exist, where somebody was down to their last 10 or 20 and somebody inspired them to another level. And little by little, abundance and their frequency changed. And now they're on top, reaching back, taking others with them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, as we're wrapping up this interview here, I want to ask a really powerful question. If today was your last day on earth and you could leave behind 3 lessons to someone, whether it be family, kids, grandkids, somebody that's going to look at this interview 100 years down the line and they're going through a really tough moment right now, what would be 3 things that you would want to leave behind to tell them that they can come to?
Be kind to others, be of service, and be selfish at times to yourself so you could be selfless to others.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And really, for everyone that just heard that, go back and listen to that again, and listen to how none of that was about Darren. It was all about giving back.
Not one thing has anything to do with Prince Marketing Group.
Yep.
None of it.
Yeah.
In fact, I've said it on my boy Omar's podcast. I think I said it on Jay that when I'm gone, and hopefully I'll be 55 in a couple of weeks. Hopefully it's 30, 35 years from now the way I take care of myself. But my legacy, I just wanted to be a man that went deep into hell and came out on the other side and sprinkled hope and recovery across the world to help others live their best lives.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I always refer to when I'm thinking about my funeral and my friends, family, and stuff are going up for the eulogy and saying stuff about me. It's like, none of the stuff, they're not going to be talking about the money that I make. They're not going to be talking about all these accomplishments I had. They're going to be saying exactly how I affected them and changed their lives or impacted my kids, grandkids.
My mother passed away 3 months ago, and I had to go back with my girls from my office, and they helped pack up her place with my sister. I have all these beautiful designer handbags that I got her. My mom was a suburbia Jewish mom. She loved that stuff, whether it was Gucci or Louis or Prada. And, it's stuff. Like, right, it made her so happy at that time. But now we have a closet full of them, and a couple of them are trying to sell or whatever because it's just pointless. It doesn't mean anything to me. But I knew to her it did. Like, when you leave, the stuff and the things don't mean anything. We're not taking them with us, I know in my heart how happy that made her, and that was beautiful because it was our little thing. Once or twice a year, her son would spoil her, and she loved that. But my dad was more like me. My dad really, things and stuff. You just give him a fishing pole and a beautiful lake and some water or some soda, and he's having the best day of his life. Yeah.
And going back to earlier where you said a lot of the lessons you got were from that fly fishing trip you took in Alaska, which that's a fishing trip in fly fishing right there, that you got some of the most powerful lessons that you ever got. So,
and man, when you think about this too, I lost my mom 3 months ago. I lost my dad February 15, 2017. Dad got the best version of me 8.5 years sober. Mom got me for over 16.
Yeah.
And, of course, there's mourning and there's sadness, but there's nothing but just gratitude when your perspective and perception changes when you walk in the light of God and service and being there for other people. Because what a blessing. I know a lot of people that can't say that,
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. So for all the listeners listening right now, how can people support you? How can they get involved in the work that you're doing? From everyone that's doing good in life, that wants to get involved, just upgrade their mindset or business, or even people that are going through addiction and struggles right now that just haven't taken that first step. What are some ways that people kind of get involved in your work?
Well, if anybody out there needs help, they can DM me on Instagram at agent_DP. I'm also on Facebook under Darren Prince. My foundation is aiminghighfoundation.org. That's the 501c3. And then if anybody, on the business front needs some guidance, they can always go to our website, princemarketinggroup.com, and email there, just put in the subject matter, speaking with me. And I always find time to communicate with people when I can.
Awesome. Well, Darren, thank you so much. It's been truly a treat and a pleasure to have you on. And I know there's so many people out there that are going to be listening to this, especially younger generation, next generation, that's going to be like, what? There's some goal that they can take and really can kind of shift their perspective. So thank you so much for coming on and for your time. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, of course, brother.